marigolds and pomegranates, we have a heart for, what we might call the typical church in the UK. A church from a town or a village rather than a mega church sort of with a congregation in the thousands. So while we know it's not the case for everyone, we try to err on the safe side, assuming that the responsibility for church comms generally comes down to only you, the church leader. And we know that you're doing comms in addition to a myriad of other responsibilities and roles that you might have, not only within your church, but within your life. Or perhaps you're not the church leader, but maybe you're in a paid admin role or even a volunteer comms role. But still, generally, everything that might be comms related tends to fall on your shoulders, even if it's not your primary focus or ministry. So that's quite a big task, even for someone who does it as a job. There are a lot of parts and things to think about within church comms. So enough even that we've filled about, 45 episodes I think we've done so far.
Roundabout, yeah.
Yeah. A little round of applause for us. So, of course, you do have to prioritise, and, maybe you're not able to do everything that you'd like to do, but you have to do what you can. But sometimes that can be at the expense of other things, whether that's other roles within the church, other projects or ministries that you'd like to get off the ground, or even just your own sanity. So how do we solve this? How do we sell the vision that is church comms and bring people on board?
Good question. I wish I had an easy answer to it. But
we're going to solve it all now.
Okay, yeah, well, it'll be a very short episode. The reality is building a team is not a speedy process. Like other ministries or projects within the church, you need to get buy-in from other people, especially your decision makers and your church leaders. And that can obviously take time. It can take time to sell that vision. It can take time to generate enthusiasm, even if people are on board, to actually, get them excited about it. So church comms, as we said, it's a very broad-ranging thing. It's something that you have to be in for the long haul. You're not going to get all of the instant results that you want straight away. And while it can be helpful to get people involved on a one-off basis and sort of get a little bit of extra manpower when you need it, this sort of ad hoc involvement isn't what you're looking for when you're trying to build a team. You want to be able to give people responsibility for things and develop them into a role of a communicator, which obviously does help with the workload. This isn't just about getting rid of your responsibilities and freeing up your to-do list, but the idea is to share it out and help with your workload. But it also prevents the isolation that comes when you're just doing stuff on your own. And it also prevents isolation for people you're bringing on board, that you're not giving them stuff and then disappearing, but actually you're working together rather than doing sort of odd jobs. And it also is something that really you need to take care over choosing who you're bringing on board. It's not just about finding the youngest person who's most likely to know what's going on, or even the least busy person in the church who actually has capacity. But you have to find people who understand that comms isn't just an extra thing. It's not an admin thing. It's a ministry, and you want people to have the right heart for it.
And to be honest, I don't think that's something that everyone within churches is aware of. That, I don't want to say, it's not that it is important over anything else, but it is as equally as important as other elements within a church. And actually just helping people to understand and be aware that it's a ministry group can be really helpful, because actually people can then offer support and prayer around it, rather than just sort of eye-rolling that you're on Twitter again or posting pretty pictures on Instagram. So one of the things to really start with, and again, we've talked about this before, have your strategy. It's not just for you, but actually it's for everyone to understand what is getting done, why, and how it will do. And this is, obviously it's helpful for yourself, but actually it goes both upwards and downwards to the rest of the sort of church teams, helping to keep the leadership sort of brought in so that they understand the logic behind it. And going downwards then of either volunteers or other team members that come on board, of just helping them to stay focused and knowing what needs to be done.
Yeah, so it's about your strategy being a strategic thing rather than just a process document, which is really helpful. Like we've said, it's helpful to organize things and keep structure, but it's more than that. It's actually buy-in and keeping focus about the vision of why you're doing comms.
Yeah. And it can also help to get sort of all the thoughts and ideas and worries out from your head and onto paper, so that when you have others on board, that you aren't having to explain it or try to kind of verbalize it because you've never had to actually think about it, or you've never had to verbalize it. You only are thinking about it, and it's not necessarily kind of, again, strategic, but it can just help to reinforce or emphasize actually what your goals are within church comms, because everyone's will be different, so you can't just copy everything that another church is doing. So it's helpful to think about the tasks, so actually breaking them down as to what gets done. And if you're starting to actually hand this out, start gently. You know, it doesn't need to be throwing your new volunteer at the deep end and having them schedule the whole month's worth of content across a number of platforms in various different forms.
As you run out of the door, arms flailing, and jump on a plane.
You know, but actually breaking it down helps you to identify actually how they can grow within understanding within the role. But when you're actually writing this out and you're thinking about what you're doing and what you could do if your team expands, or actually just thinking, actually, what should I be doing? Don't stress about feeling that you have to do everything on every platform all at once, because actually that just then causes you more stress, and the task list will never end and will constantly grow. You know, focus on a few platforms or a few specific content forms that best serve your audiences.
Yeah. So again, that prioritization, but also just kind of baby steps, and acknowledging that as much as it takes time to recruit people, it also takes time to equip them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hiya. Martin here again. Voiceover guy. Yeah, that's it. Just wanted to say you should probably subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. That means you'll get a notification so you can hear my voice. Every week. Yeah. And some church stuff, obviously. But mainly my voice. My voice. My voice.
So rather than assuming that people already know what they're doing and trying to palm off half of our jobs onto them, how do we actually go about equipping them?
Yeah, so I think it's important, and one thing that actually really excites me is about building people's skills. I think, and actually I've never really clocked it until we started planning for this episode, that people often forget that serving in a church, other than, you know, that being a wonderful and important thing that we should be doing, is actually that it's a great opportunity to skills build and learn new things and develop in new areas that we probably don't have a lot of opportunity to in our normal life, you know, outside of the church building. And I've realised recently, and as I've been working on my CV, that there are a number of things and projects and ministries and volunteer roles that I've been involved in at church that actually I can include in my work hunt and use them as examples of things that I've done.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, so if you don't have much experience in customer service or front-facing roles, why not think about serving on your hospitality or cafe team? It's a great way of going, yes, I've served people, and also they're not going to shout at me because it was a £3.50 flat white done wrong or something. But actually, it's just a great way to build your confidence and skills. Or if you're looking for some of that kind of attention to detail examples that often jobs are always looking forward to, you know, join the cleaning team. That's a great example to be able to say, I did this, I had a task to do, and I ensured things were to a high standard.
Yeah, and that's the case for everyone, but I think especially for teenagers who, a lot of the time teenagers aren't doing this. Like, there aren't that many teenagers out there who are volunteering and giving their time in organisations. And so even in like uni applications and stuff like that, these are things which can actually set you apart. Yeah,
and actually saying it was a volunteer role rather than, oh, I worked in a cafe and I've got customer facing, to say I volunteer in this, that's extra good. You can use these examples to add to your CV, but actually also think of it the other way of how could you offer this to someone to add to their, but also as well as younger people. Actually, you know, don't exclude the older generations in your church who are wanting to upskill. Maybe they do have an experience, but they are not as native to digital and social media and stuff, but actually they're still just as enthusiastic and they have ideas. But I think the whole thing is that actually people want to have a chance to serve. They want to develop their skills. And it's just this underestimated opportunity that we just don't seem to talk about in churches.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also for those older people, especially for those who have retired, it might be that comms seems completely out of reach to them, that they don't think they could get involved with that at all. But that doesn't mean they don't want to, and it doesn't mean that they wouldn't do a great job. It might actually be that they've got time to do it in a way that other people in the church don't. So yeah, that can be really positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think just offering it out to people, like we've said about making people aware that it's a ministry, and part of that is communicating the vision for it, but also communicating the need. You know, the fact that we need help with this, and the fact that we would love to do so much more. And this is why, this is what we want to achieve, but this is how we want to achieve it. And we can't do that on the basis of it's just me doing it by myself. I only have a couple of hours a week max that I can devote to this, you know?
And I think it's really easy within the church to expect or to feel like, as volunteers or those serving within the church, that you have to give with very little opportunity of getting something out of it other than, oh, well, people, you know, I used to be on the cleaning team, but sort of like no one would see me do it, and no one really thanked me for it. But actually I knew that it was nice, but it's very easy for things to become a thankless task. And so actually knowing, again, the why. So we're doing this not because we just want to be on Facebook or we just want to have a snazzy website, but because it means we can serve people better, we can connect with people, and, you know, you can get involved, and we will allow you to be creative. You know, there's only so many ways that you can hoover a carpet, that there's no creativity with that, where actually people want an opportunity to be expressive and share ideas and stuff. And I think that's the joy within comms, that actually so many people can get a chance to kind of influence it and take part in actually deciding how it goes.
Yeah. So by writing these down, again, as we've said, it's helpful because it gives you an idea of where the needs are, but it also gives you that idea of how people can be helped by it and the skills that they might want to pick up. And so by communicating the needs, but also communicating what they're going to get out of it, that can be a really helpful way to recruit. And in terms of actually going about equipping them and helping them, I mean, a really simple way might be to share an episode of your favourite Church Comms podcast with them. If there's an episode that we've done that, I'm assuming we're the favourite, by the way. If there's an episode that we've done that covers a specific issue that you think has some helpful pointers, then share that with them. If there's someone who struggles with digital and wants to upskill in that, then it might be that you have to help them know how to download the podcast, and maybe that's the first step. But then again, by listing out what needs doing, you can focus on what also needs teaching, and that's something that we're going to cover as well. Is we are by no means the only Church Comms resource out there. We very much aim to be the first step for people who do have really limited resources and budgets and everything like that. But we want to shout out about other people who are resourcing the church as well. So we've got an episode coming up highlighting all of these different resources, and that's something that we're going to try and keep updated on our website from time to time as well. So you can see all of the different resources that are out there to help you equip people in these things.
I think it's also important to add that if you're new, or this is not your particular giftings area, or that maybe this is just you've been given this role and you're not quite sure where to go, there's no shame in saying that you don't know something. Okay, team of volunteers, or we're all volunteers together, or whoever, that we're going to learn this together. I think actually there's something very powerful doing something as a team, rather than assuming you have to know everything and you have to train them. If you don't know it, I think that's okay to say you don't.
And it's better than rather than trying to sort of like front it out and pretend.
Yeah.
And it's that constant balance of, when we've got limited time anyway, how do we balance between, I don't know how to do that, so I'm not going to do it, or I don't know how to do that, but it's worthwhile doing, so I'm going to learn it. Accepting that some of these things might be a bit more complicated and might take a bit more time to learn. But that doesn't mean that it's not worth doing it. And it's just that constant prioritization and wrestling. And again, that strategy and knowing the end goal will help you to make those sorts of decisions. I think it's really important to recognize, as well as equipping people, that, you know, probably goes directly alongside it. We need to encourage people. You know, it can be tempting to shut down ideas because from our experience, they may not have worked in the past. I mean, that's my most frustrating phrase to hear in the church, and you would have heard it many times, of, well, we tried that before and it didn't work. So don't fall into that trap, even if you kind of know it won't work. Like, give people some space to explore it and guide them along and encourage them, rather than just shutting it down. Just because it didn't work before doesn't mean that doing it in a slightly different way won't work this time. Social media especially is always changing, and algorithms are always changing. So it might be that the trends now are slightly different and it will kick off in a way that it hasn't before. It might be that they'll bring something new to it. I think as long as you realize that it has to be within the strategy, and so again, coming back to that, coming into that vision, and if something doesn't align with that, gently explaining why that is, and people are a lot more likely to accept that rather than it being a shutting down of, and that will just make people switch off. They'll become disenfranchised, and it's a difficult thing, sort of being gentle and encouraging with people, but it's also at the heart of what we want to say is this isn't about just doing stuff for the sake of it, and it's not about doing it at any cost. We've talked before about this being a people ministry as much as anything else. At the end of the day, it'll be up to you where you draw the line with these ideas of what you sort of explore and what you say, not for now. It's definitely okay to try something new and assess from that actually a success for it might look like, oh, well, that went okay, let's try it again. It doesn't need to go viral and have thousands of impressions, engagement for it to be considered a success. But also, if it was a good learning experience, maybe that was a good thing to do.
So always remember to be gentle, especially if you do have younger people in your team. Give them permission to fail within reason, even though unless you're putting something drastically offensive, I don't really think you can fail with social media. Particularly, there's everything is an opportunity to learn, and as within any other ministry group or project or role within a church, it is important not to just let the new people kind of go off on their own. I think it's important for their sake, but also for yours. Remember to be collaborative until they can take sort of a bit more independent responsibility for themselves. And again, I think there's something really good in doing it together so that you can learn together. But actually working in a group, especially in the beginning, ensures that you're talking the same sort of language, whether that's writing content, so actually specific language and tone, but actually thinking about design styles. If you've got specific colours and branding and sort of the poster styles or flyer styles that you go for, your newsletters, social media copy, taking photos or updating the website, you don't want to end up having very mixed messaging because everyone's just doing their own thing. And it's important to remember that it's not just about trying to offload to someone just because you're on the team. Great, you can deal with it all, but think of it more as sharing rather than passing. You are a team, so it's not about leaving them to it, but actually sort of staying together in it. And so I think with all of these things as well, it's worth saying that they're not just specific to comms. Encouraging and mentoring people should be happening in all sorts of ministries, in the same way as knowing the vision and the why of why you're doing it, writing down a strategy for how you're going to do it, and actually communicating the needs that are there. They should go for all areas of ministry, really. As with my last point, which is to pray. We want to pray for new people to come on board. We want to pray that God will provide the people and that he'll provide the skills, but also pray that he will give us the wisdom to know how to best use these skills and to wisely equip and encourage them and bring about this heart attitude at the same time as, upskilling people. And then obviously praying that God would bless our efforts and their efforts as we seek to share this gospel message through what our church is communicating. Just leaving it all in his hands and doing it in his power.